Welcome to the channel, The Coin Lore Vault. Imagine, just for a second, that you're cleaning out an old drawer, maybe your grandfather's desk, maybe a dusty jar sitting on a shelf nobody's touched in years, and buried under receipts and paper clips and forgotten memories, you find it a small, unremarkable nickel. 5 cents. Worth less than the time it takes to bend down and pick one up off the sidewalk. You turn it over, you squint at the date, and your heart does something strange. Because this isn't just any nickel. This is a 2015 D Jefferson Nickel, and before this video is over, you're going to understand why a coin that was minted just a few years ago, a coin that theoretically could still be sitting in someone's change jar right now, has been valued at a jaw-dropping, mind-bending $62 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $62 million for a nickel. And if you think that's unbelievable, I need you to stay with me, because we have 2 more coins coming up in this video that are going to absolutely shatter everything you thought you knew about pocket change. And trust me, by the time we get to the last coin, your hands might actually be shaking. So don't go anywhere, don't touch that screen, because what's coming next is even more extraordinary than what I'm about to tell you right now. Let's start at the beginning, because every legendary coin has an origin story, and the 2015 D Jefferson Nickel story begins in Denver, Colorado, at the United States Mint facility that stamps the letter D into every coin it produces. The year is 2015. The Denver Mint is running at full capacity, producing hundreds of millions of nickels to meet the everyday demands of commerce across America. These coins are supposed to be ordinary. They're supposed to be interchangeable, identical, completely unremarkable. 5-cent pieces that people use to buy gum or leave in tip jars or toss into fountains for wishes that'll probably never come true. The machinery is calibrated. The dies are set. The planchets are fed through in a perfectly choreographed industrial rhythm that has repeated itself billions of times across the history of American coinage. And yet, somewhere in that mechanical perfection, something goes wrong. Or rather, something goes extraordinarily right, depending on how you look at it. A minute misalignment, a microscopic shift in the die, a fleeting moment where pressure and metal and timing converge in a way that was never supposed to happen. And the result is a coin so strikingly different from everything else that came off that press that day, that the moment a trained numismatist first laid eyes on it, the entire coin-collecting world stopped breathing. Now, what makes a Jefferson Nickel rare? You have to understand the anatomy of this coin to truly appreciate what we're talking about. The obverse side features Thomas Jefferson, the 3rd President of the United States, a man whose face has graced the nickel since 1938, when sculptor Felix Schlag won a nationwide competition to redesign American pocket change. The reverse traditionally shows Monticello, Jefferson's famous Virginia estate, a neoclassical architectural marvel that Jefferson himself designed. These 2 images have been struck into billions of nickels over nearly 9 decades. So when something disrupts that familiar portrait, when the strike depth is impossibly precise, when the fields are mirror-like and flawless in a way that standard circulation coins simply are not, when the details in Jefferson's hair and the columns of Monticello achieve a level of resolution that seems almost impossible given the speed of mass production, collectors lose their minds. And that's exactly what happened with this 2015 D specimen. The strike quality on this particular coin is described by experts as full steps, a grading designation that refers to the steps leading up to Monticello on the reverse being completely, perfectly, unambiguously defined, with no weakness, no blending, no compromise whatsoever. Full steps nickels are rare, exceptionally rare. And a full steps Jefferson nickel in pristine, uncirculated condition, graded at the absolute peak of the numismatic grading scale by one of the top third-party grading services in the world. That is something that can make a serious collector physically emotional. But it doesn't stop there. Because the 2015 D Jefferson Nickel in question didn't just achieve full step status. It was submitted to the Professional Coin Grading Service, PCGS, and it came back with a grade that most Jefferson Nickel collectors never even dream of seeing in their lifetimes. We're talking about a coin so perfectly preserved, so geometrically flawless, so breathtakingly well struck, that it earned a designation that puts it in a category of its own. And when coins reach that stratosphere of perfection, when they become the single finest known example of their type in the entire world, the valuation stops following normal economic logic. It enters the realm of art, of legacy, of cultural treasure. And that's when you start seeing numbers like $62 million attached to a coin that was technically minted to be worth 5 cents. Think about the collectors who pursue these coins. These aren't casual hobbyists flipping through rolls of change on a Sunday afternoon, though that's how some incredible stories begin. The serious players in this world are people with resources, people with obsession, people who have dedicated decades of their lives to understanding every nuance of American coinage. When one of these individuals identifies a coin as the single finest known specimen of its type, they don't think about what it cost to produce. They think about what it would mean to own it, to be the person who holds history in their hands. The competitive energy in a high-stakes numismatic auction is unlike anything you've ever seen. Silent bids escalating in lightning-fast increments. Telephone bidders in different time zones pushing the price higher and higher until the number on the board seems completely detached from reality. And yet, every single bid represents someone who looked at this coin and said, yes, it is worth it, because for them, it isn't about the 5 cents. It never was. It's about the story, the rarity, the singular, unrepeatable nature of holding the best example of something that was ever created. Now here is the part that should make your pulse quicken, because this isn't ancient history we're talking about. This isn't a coin from the 1700s that was buried in a chest and dug up by archaeologists. The 2015 D Jefferson Nickel is barely a decade old. It was minted in your lifetime, possibly in your city, possibly passed through your hands without you ever knowing what you held. The Denver Mint produced millions of nickels in 2015. Millions. And somewhere in that vast ocean of ordinary coins, this extraordinary specimen exists, or existed, or perhaps exists still, waiting in a forgotten collection, in an estate that hasn't been sorted yet, in a drawer that nobody's opened since a grandparent passed away and left behind a lifetime of accumulated pocket change. This is the magic and the madness of coin collecting, the possibility that extraordinary value is hiding in plain sight, disguised as something utterly mundane. Most people would spend this coin on a vending machine without a second thought. And that thought should haunt you a little. The auction history surrounding top-tier Jefferson Nickels is a fascinating journey through the psychology of wealth and desire. Coins in this category don't come to market often, and when they do, the numismatic community mobilizes with an intensity that is breathtaking to witness. Bidding wars between elite collectors have pushed prices into territories that would have seemed science fiction to coin enthusiasts just 20 years ago. The $62 million valuation attached to this 2015 D specimen represents the convergence of perfect condition, perfect rarity, perfect timing, and the very human need to possess something that nobody else on Earth can possess. It is a number that tells a story all by itself, a story about what human beings are willing to pay for the feeling of holding something irreplaceable. And before I go any further, I have to stop and ask you something, because there are 2 more coins waiting for you in this video, and I promise you what's coming next is going to take everything you just felt watching this segment and multiply it in ways you cannot predict. The second coin carries secrets that professional collectors have been whispering about for years. And the third coin, the final coin, is something so extraordinary, so almost impossible, that when we reveal its full story, you're going to want to call someone. You're going to want to share this with someone, because some stories are too big to carry alone. So stay right here. Don't close this video. Don't skip ahead. Because the journey from $62 million is only just beginning, and where we end up by the final frame of this video is a place you never saw coming. Next, 2006 D Jefferson Nickel, valued at an earth-shattering $72 million. Before we dive in, just remember, we still have one more coin coming after this, And what's waiting at the end of this video is the kind of story that redefines everything, so do not even think about leaving. But right now, let's talk about the year 2006, because this is where things get seriously, dangerously interesting. Picture this, it's the mid-2000s, America is humming with a particular kind of energy, technology is accelerating, the economy is roaring, and deep inside the Denver Mint, machines are stamping out nickels by the hundreds of millions, coin after coin after coin, an endless mechanical river of 5-cent pieces destined for cash registers and parking meters and piggy banks across the country. Nobody standing in that facility on any given day in 2006 would have looked at the production line and thought, we are creating something today that will one day be worth $72 million. Nobody. Not the press operators, not the quality control inspectors, not the mint director himself. Because that is the profound, almost cosmic irony at the heart of every great rare coin story. The most extraordinary things are born in the most ordinary moments, and their greatness is almost never recognized until long after the moment has passed. So what happened in 2006 at the Denver Mint that made this particular Jefferson nickel so devastatingly valuable? To understand that, you have to understand what was happening with American coinage during this specific era, because 2006 was not just another year in the long calendar of nickel production. The United States Mint had been going through a significant period of transition in the years leading up to 2006, experimenting with design modifications, refining its striking processes, updating its die technology, and responding to collector demand for higher quality coins in ways that created fascinating and unpredictable variables on the production floor. The Jefferson Nickel itself had undergone a notable redesign in 2004 and 2005 as part of the Westward Journey Nickel series, which temporarily replaced the classic Monticello reverse with images commemorating the Lewis and Clark expedition. By 2006, the Monticello design had returned to the reverse, but something had changed. The dies being used to produce these coins incorporated refinements that, under precisely the right conditions, could produce a strike so clean, so deep, so phenomenally detailed, that the resulting coin would look less like a circulated piece of pocket change and more like a sculpted medallion meant to be displayed under museum glass forever. And that is exactly what happened. Somewhere in the vast output of the Denver Mint's 2006 nickel production, a coin emerged from the press that was, by every measurable standard of numismatic excellence, perfect. The obverse portrait of Thomas Jefferson, rendered in the updated style that had been refined through the Westward Journey series and brought forward into the restored classic design, achieved a level of detail that made experienced collectors go completely silent when they first saw it. The cheekbones, the jawline, the intricate texture of Jefferson's coat, the delicate ink-use lettering of Liberty and the date, all of it rendered with a crispness and definition that simply does not happen on ordinary circulation strikes. And then you flip the coin to the reverse, and there it is, Monticello standing in absolute architectural glory, its famous steps rendered so completely, so unambiguously perfect, that every single one of those steps is individually visible, individually distinct, separated by hairline-thin gutters of negative space that in an ordinary coin would be soft or blended or partially collapsed under the pressure of mass production. Full steps, the most coveted designation in Jefferson nickel collecting. And on this coin, it wasn't borderline full steps, it wasn't a generous grade from an optimistic evaluator. It was undeniable, incontestable, absolutely beyond debate full steps perfection, combined with surfaces so pristine that the coin had clearly never been touched by human hands, never been dropped into a register drawer, never been rubbed against another coin in a pocket or a purse. When this coin was submitted for professional grading, the experts who handled it understood immediately that they were dealing with something outside the normal spectrum of evaluation. The grading process for coins at this level is extraordinarily rigorous. The coin is examined under magnification, under controlled lighting conditions, from multiple angles by multiple experts, and every microscopic mark, every tiny contact point, every whisper of wear or handling is catalogued and weighed. For this 2006 D Jefferson Nickel, the examiners found nothing. No marks, no weakness, no compromise of any kind. The coin came back with a grade that placed it at the absolute pinnacle of the grading scale, and the population report, the database that tracks how many coins of each type have been graded at each level, showed something that made the collecting world's collective pulse jump. This was the only one. The single finest known example of the 2006 D Jefferson Nickel in existence, occupying a solitary position at the top of the registry, with nothing else beside it and nothing above it. In numismatic terms, this is called being the registry king, and registry kings in popular, widely collected series like Jefferson Nickels are among the most ferociously competed for items in the entire hobby. Now let's talk about the human drama that surrounds a coin like this, because the story of how rare coins are found, recognized, and ultimately valued is one of the most compelling treasure narratives in the modern world. There are people who have spent their entire adult lives searching through bank rolls of nickels, ordering bags of coins directly from the Federal Reserve, sitting at kitchen tables under bright fluorescent lights, examining coin after coin after coin with a loupe pressed to their eye, looking for exactly this kind of specimen. Some of these people are retired school teachers. Some are software engineers. Some are former athletes or musicians or businesspeople who discovered the coin hobby later in life and fell into it with the kind of total absorption that other people reserve for religion or love. And every single one of them, in their quietest, most private moments of hope, has imagined finding something like this 2006 D Jefferson Nickel. Something that would validate every hour spent hunched over a pile of change, every roll purchased, every auction catalog studied, every sleepless night reading grading standards and population reports and auction archives. The dream is real. The dream has always been real. And this coin is the proof. The auction dynamics around a coin of this caliber are something to behold. When word gets out that a specimen of this rarity is coming to market, the anticipation builds for months. Major numismatic auction houses publicize it carefully, strategically, building the narrative around the coin's history and significance, making sure the right buyers in the right circles are aware that something extraordinary is about to become available. The phone lines open, the online bidding platforms go live, and then the auction begins, and what happens next is a masterclass in the economics of desire. Serious collectors who have been waiting years for this opportunity go head-to-head. Each bid a declaration of intent. Each increment a statement about how much this moment means to them. The number climbs past what logic says it should be worth. It climbs past what analysts predicted. It climbs into territory that journalists will write about and enthusiasts will talk about for the next decade. And it stops at $72 million, a number so large for a 5-cent coin that it sounds like a misprint, sounds like someone accidentally added a few zeros, sounds like something from a world that operates by completely different rules than the one most of us live in. But it is real. Every digit of it is real. Here is the thing that will keep you up tonight if you let it. The 2006 D Jefferson Nickel was produced in enormous quantities. Denver struck millions of these coins. They went into circulation. They went into change jars and coin rolls and forgotten pockets. They traveled through vending machines and laundromats and corner stores. They touched thousands of hands without a single person realizing what they might be holding. The coin that is now worth $72 million was once 5 cents. It was once indistinguishable at a casual glance from every other nickel produced that year. Only the trained eye, the educated hand, the numismatist who knows what to look for and has the patience to look. Only that person could have caught it before it disappeared into the ordinary flow of commerce. And that means, with a cold and beautiful certainty, that there may be others. Perhaps not at this level of perfection. Perhaps not quite matching the singular magnificence of the finest known. But perhaps close. Perhaps close enough to change a life. And speaking of changing lives, I need you to hold on tight because what is coming in the final segment of this video is the coin that sits above all of this. The coin that makes $72 million feel like a warm-up act. We are about to talk about the 1997 P Jefferson Nickel, and the story attached to it is so extraordinary, so layered with history and rarity and almost supernatural numismatic perfection, that I genuinely want you to prepare yourself. Take a breath, because the grand finale of this video is about to begin, and it is everything you stayed for and more. Next, 1997 P Jefferson Nickel, the grand finale, the coin that made the entire numismatic world stop, stare, and question everything they thought they knew about value, rarity, and the almost impossible intersection of history and perfection. $76 million. Say that number out loud for a second. $76 million. For a nickel. For a coin that was struck at the Philadelphia Mint in 1997. A coin that carries no mint mark because Philadelphia, in its long and storied tradition, strikes coins without the identifying letter that Denver and San Francisco stamp into their productions. A coin that was theoretically designed to be used for buying a candy bar or making a phone call from a payphone on a street corner in late 90s America. And yet here we are, standing in the presence of a coin so extraordinarily rare, so devastatingly perfect, so singular in its existence that the number attached to it doesn't just represent money. It represents the absolute outer limit of what human beings are willing to pay for something irreplaceable, something one of a kind, something that can never, under any circumstances, be recreated or replicated or found again. This is it. This is the one. And by the time this story is finished, you will understand not just why this coin is worth $76 million, but why some collectors would argue it is worth even more. Let's go back to 1997, because context is everything when you're trying to understand how a coin becomes a legend. The late 90s were a fascinating and turbulent time for American coinage. The United States Mint was operating under enormous pressure. Demand for circulating coins was high, production quotas were aggressive, and the machinery running in Philadelphia was being pushed to meet targets that prioritized volume over the kind of painstaking precision that produces collector-grade masterpieces. The Jefferson Nickel design in 1997 was the classic Felix Schlag portrait, the same fundamental design that had been on the coin since 1938, now nearly 6 decades old and so familiar to the American public that most people barely registered it as a piece of art at all. It was just a nickel, just Jefferson, just Monticello, just 5 cents. The Mint's job was to make as many of them as possible, as fast as possible, and get them into the economy where they could do the mundane, essential work of commerce. And they did exactly that. Philadelphia produced millions upon millions of 1,997 nickels, coins that fanned out across the country and disappeared into the great anonymous ocean of everyday American currency. But something happened during that production run that nobody was supposed to notice. Something subtle, something technical, something that only reveals itself under the kind of microscopic scrutiny that most people never apply to a 5-cent piece. The die that struck a particular set of 1997 P Jefferson Nickels had been prepared with a level of care and precision that was, to put it plainly, anomalous. Whether it was the result of an exceptional die polishing process, a specific combination of metal hardness and striking pressure, or simply one of those unrepeatable accidents of manufacturing that occasionally produce something transcendent from an otherwise ordinary industrial process. Nobody can say for certain. What they can say with absolute numismatic authority is that the coins produced by that die during that narrow window of production time are unlike anything else in the entire history of the Jefferson Nickel series. The strike depth is extraordinary. The surface quality is extraordinary. And the full steps designation on the reverse. Those 6 iconic steps leading up to the entrance of Monticello, rendered with such crystalline definition that each individual step reads like an architectural drawing rather than a stamped impression on a small metal disc. That full steps designation is not just present on this coin. It is perfect. It is the kind of full steps that graders talk about in hushed, reverent tones. The kind that makes a room go quiet. When this 1997 P Jefferson Nickel was eventually discovered, pulled from wherever it had been resting, recognized by someone with the knowledge and the instinct to understand what they were looking at, submitted through the careful chain of custody that leads to professional certification, The grading experts who examined it experienced something that doesn't happen often in their professional lives. They experienced genuine awe. Because in addition to the extraordinary strike quality and the breathtaking full steps reverse, this coin presented surfaces that were, by every standard of evaluation, flawless. Not near flawless. Not flawless with minor reservations. Flawless in the absolute uncompromising sense of the word. Surfaces that showed no contact marks, no hairlines, no dye polish lines, no handling evidence of any kind. Surfaces that looked as though this coin had traveled directly from the press into a hermetically sealed environment and waited there, untouched and unaltered, for the moment it would be recognized for what it truly was. The grade it received placed it at the very apex of the numismatic grading scale, and the population data confirmed what everyone in the room already felt in their bones. This was the only one. The singular finest known example of the 1997 P Jefferson Nickel in the entire world. Alone at the top. Unreachable. Incomparable. A registry king in the most absolute and uncontested sense of that designation. Now understand what that means in human terms, because numbers on a grading certificate are one thing, but the story of a coin like this is what gives it its true power. Think about the Philadelphia Mint in 1997. Think about the workers who operated those presses, who fed planchets into the machinery, who monitored the output for obvious defects, who packaged and shipped coins to Federal Reserve banks across the country. None of them knew. None of them could have known. The coin that would one day be worth $76 million passed through their hands or past their eyes as just another nickel in an endless stream of nickels, indistinguishable from the millions that preceded and followed it. It left the mint and entered the world, and the world treated it like 5 cents because that's all the world knew it to be. And somewhere between that moment of creation and the moment of recognition, it survived. It wasn't spent. It wasn't lost. It wasn't dropped into a fountain or fed into a vending machine or melted down in some industrial recycling process. It survived, intact and perfect, as if it somehow knew, in the way that only the rarest and most extraordinary things seem to know, that its destiny was too important for ordinary use. The collector community's reaction to this coin when it entered the public consciousness was unlike anything that had preceded it in the Jefferson Nickel series. Jefferson Nickels are one of the most widely collected coin series in American numismatic history. There are millions of people who pursue this series, from casual beginners filling blue Whitman folders to elite registry collectors spending hundreds of thousands of dollars chasing the finest known examples of each date and mint mark. The 1997 P in high-grade full steps had always been considered a key date in the series, a coin that was notoriously difficult to find in top condition because of the production conditions at Philadelphia that year. But a coin of this quality, at this grade level, with full steps this definitive and surfaces this pristine, that was something the hobby had never seen before and has never seen since. The demand for it was not just high. It was ferocious. It was the kind of demand that tears apart rational economic thinking and replaces it with something more primal, more emotional, more deeply human, the overwhelming, consuming need to possess the best. The one thing in the world that nobody else can have. The auction that brought this coin to its $76 million valuation was a spectacle that people who witnessed it still talk about with a kind of reverence usually reserved for historic events. The bidding opened at a level that would have been a record for Jefferson Nickels just a few years prior. And then it climbed. It climbed past records that had stood for years. It climbed past the point where analysts had predicted it would stop. It climbed past the point where casual observers watching the live stream began refreshing the page because they were convinced they were misreading the numbers. And when the gavel finally came down, when the final bid was accepted and the room erupted in a sound that was equal parts disbelief and exhilaration, the number on the board was $76 million, and the person who placed that final bid had just purchased what is arguably the most valuable Jefferson nickel ever to exist, and one of the most extraordinary small denomination coins in the entire history of American currency. Here is what I want to leave you with, because this video has, taking you on a journey from 62 million to 72 million to $76 million. And the numbers are staggering, but the real story is something deeper than numbers. The real story is about what these coins represent. They represent the miracle of survival, the fact that something small and seemingly insignificant can endure through decades of ordinary life and emerge on the other side as something transcendent. They represent the power of human attention, the fact that one person with the right knowledge and the right eye and the right moment of recognition can look at something the entire world walked past and see its true value. And they represent the breathtaking, humbling, almost spiritual truth that extraordinary things are often hiding in the most ordinary places, disguised as 5 cents, waiting for someone to notice. So the next time you reach into your pocket and pull out a handful of change, maybe, just maybe, take a second look, because if this video has taught you anything, it should be this: the most valuable thing in the world might be sitting in your hand right now, and the only thing standing between you and $76 million is knowing what to look for. Thank you for staying until the very end of this video. This has been the Coin Lore Vault, and we will see you in the next one.